Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nakat's Bookish Cafe. Today we will be seeing which books are going to be going into this challenge cup for the year 2025. Alright, so in 2024, for the first time, I brought out this challenge cup, and this was kind of to replace the lists that we often do of like 20 books to read in 2024 or 12 books by 12 friends, all things I've not done a great job at. So I decided to do a challenge cup instead, in which I chose 10 books that I was intimidated by, and I put them in this cup. And in February through November, each month during my TBR, I would pick out a piece of paper and then I would have to read that book in that month. I did not 100% complete that challenge this year, but that is okay. It was my first time doing it, and we're gonna go ahead and do it again this year, but there are going to be some changes. First off, we're gonna do 11 books instead of 10. We will be choosing one January through November. Once again, we won't be doing this in December because in December I do my 12 books of Christmas bingo board, but the rest of the months we will be selecting a book from the challenge cup. The other thing that is going to be changing is the way that we select the books, or the way I select the books, I guess. And the first time I just kind of went through my Goodreads want to read shelf and was just like, okay, what are some books that I'm interested in reading, but I just know that I will not pick them up because I'm intimidated by them. Most of the time it was because they were relatively long. Other times it might have been the content in the book that was maybe intimidating because I thought it would maybe upset me or be a little too complicated for me. But this year we're gonna do it a little bit differently, and we're gonna kind of align it with some of the challenges that I often set for myself. So this would be like reading 50% queer books, reading books over 500 pages, reading books by Indigenous authors, reading books with disability rep, all that jazz. So I have 11 different categories, and then I have 5 books in each category. So this video is going to be relatively long. I'm just going to throw that out there. So go ahead and grab yourself a drink and maybe a snack. I am going to go ahead and go through each of the 5 options for each category. I'm going to read the synopsis for them. I don't often read synopses on my channel. Usually I try to summarize it, but because a lot of these are books that I'm not super familiar with, they have been on my TBR for a while, and I was just kind of like reminded of them while I was going through my list. I'm gonna go ahead and just read the synopsis, and then I will spin a wheel 1 through 5, and whichever one I land on, that book will go ahead and go into my cup here. So that is that. I'm not gonna do like screen recordings of the wheel or anything, or of like Goodreads, because I have struggled with screen recording in the past, and I just really want to make sure that this goes smoothly and I don't have to worry about that. So you'll just have to go ahead and trust me. Maybe I'll like turn my computer around when I spin the wheel, just so you know that I'm not a big fat liar. But that being said, without further ado, I will most likely go ahead and put myself in the corner somewhere, and then I will have the 5 options of the book on the screen, and then I'll read their synopses and I'll select the book, and then we'll just move on to the next category. So like I said, long video for sure. You're going to be hearing a lot synopses for a lot of books. Hopefully you find some books that you are quite intrigued by and maybe you want to add to your TBR. All the books that are on this list that I have made are books that I am definitely interested in. I thought it was really cool for me to like go through my TBR and be reminded while I added some of these books. So even if I don't select them for this challenge, it would be really great if I could read them at some point, because they are on my TBR. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the first category. All right, so the first category may seem a little bit weird because I did a video already related to this, and that is rereads. So I did a video where I chose 6 books that I wanted to reread this year, but I have 5 other books here that I would be interested in rereading, but they were not as much of a priority as the ones in that video. So this would be an additional reread that I would hopefully be doing at some point this year. So the first one is going to be a well-known series, and that is going to be Scythe by Neil Shusterman. So usually if I put in a series, I kind of only mean that I start the reread process. So it's not like I have to read Scythe, Thunderhead, and The Toll. I just at the very least would like to get started with this reread process. So the main reason that I would like to reread this series is, one, I did have a good time with it. The Toll I gave 5 stars. I don't think I gave the other 2 5 stars. I was one of those few people who really liked the last book. I think a lot of people didn't. But I had a great time with it. It ended up being one of my favorite books of like 2021, 2022. I can't really remember which one. But Neil Shusterman recently came out with a short story collection that is set in this world. And I don't really want to read that short story collection until I reread the series, because I feel like I would get more out of the short stories. At this point, I have forgotten a lot. So the synopsis for this, it's a young adult dystopian world, a world with no hunger, no disease, no war, no misery. Humanity has conquered all those things and has even conquered death. Now Scythes are the only ones who can end life, and they are commanded to do so in order to keep the size of the population under control. Citra and Rowan are chosen to apprentice to a scythe, a role that neither wants. These teens must master the art of taking life, knowing that the consequence of failure could mean losing their own. So that is the synopsis of that story, number 1. The next book is another well-known series, and it's just a well-beloved series, and I really would like to reread it because I don't think I ever have, and that is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And I know you don't really need to hear a synopsis for this one, but I'm going to. It says, could you survive on your own in the wild, with everyone out to make sure you don't live to see the morning? In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Panem, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital is harsh and cruel and keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen, who lives alone with her mother and younger sister, regards it as a death sentence when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to dead before, and survival for her is second nature. Without really meaning to, she becomes a contender, but if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. So I do own all of these books. I'm not sure if I would read them physically or if maybe I would check out the audiobooks, but that is the second option. The third option is called For Real. This is by Alexis Hall. This is actually the first book I ever read by this author. I'm not sure if this one's traditionally published. I think at the time that I read it, it was self-published. That may have since changed. I know that there's a lot of self-published works becoming traditionally published, and Alexis Hall has definitely increased in popularity over the years. But it says Lawrence Dalziel is worn down and washed up, and for him the scene is all played out. 6 years from his last meaningful relationship, he's pushing 40 and tired of pretending nothing has changed. Then he meets Toby Finch, young, fearless, fierce, and vulnerable. Everything Lori can't remember being. Toby doesn't know who he wants to be or what he wants to do, but he knows that he wants Lori. The problem is, while Lori will surrender his body, he won't surrender his heart because Toby is too young, too intense, too easy to hurt. And what they have, no matter how right it feels, can't last. It can't mean anything. It can't be real. So this is like a BDSM male romance, age gap, obviously. I do own the book physically, and it was my first BDSM book as well, so it's a lot of firsts for me, so I would like to revisit it. The next one is gonna be The Night Swim. That is by Megan Golden. This is an author that I have since read. I'm trying to think, I think I might have only read one other book by her. I keep meaning to read more of her books because I really like them, but this is probably one of the first like really intense thrillers that I read, and it was amazing. I listened to it as an audiobook, and I would probably do so again because it has a podcast element to it. It says, ever since her true crime podcast became an overnight sensation and set an innocent man free, Rachel Kroll has become a household name and the last hope for people seeking justice. But she's used to being recognized for her voice, not her face, which makes it all the more upsetting when she finds a note on her car windshield addressed to her begging for help. The new season of Rachel's podcast has brought her to a small town being torn apart by a devastating rape trial. A local golden boy, a swimmer destined for Olympic greatness, has been accused of raping the beloved granddaughter of the police chief. Under pressure to make season 3 a success, Rachel throws herself into the investigation, but the mysterious letters keep coming. Someone is following her, and she won't stop until Rachel finds out what happened to her sister 25 years ago. Officially, Jenner Stills tragically drowned, but the letters insist she was murdered. And when Rachel starts asking questions, nobody in town wants to answer. The past and the present start to collide as Rachel uncovers startling connections between the two cases and a revelation that will change the course of the trial and the lives of everyone involved. So I remember this being a pretty difficult read for obvious reasons, but I would like to visit it. A book that spent a lot of time on my favorite shelf but was recently unthroned by The Chronicles of a Traveling Cat is I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. The reason it was unthroned is not because I like the book less, it's just because I haven't read it for so long. And this is one of my earlier LGBTQ plus books that I read that featured a non-binary character, so I would like to go ahead and revisit that. Mason Deaver is an author that I have not read anything else by, I think. But it says, when Ben DeBacker comes out to their parents as non-binary, they're thrown out of their house and forced to move in with their estranged older sister, Hannah, and her husband, Thomas, whom Ben has never even met before. Struggling with an anxiety disorder compounded by their parents' rejection, they come out only to Hannah, Thomas, and their therapist and try to keep a low profile in a new school. But Ben's attempts to survive the last year of senior year unnoticed or thwarted when Nathan Allen, a funny and charismatic student, decides to take Ben under his wing. As Ben and Nathan's friendship grows, their feelings for each other begin to change, and what started as a disastrous turn of events looks like it might just be a chance to start a happier new life. So I remember this book was, heartbreaking to read, but it still had some good vibes to it. So I will see which of those we are going to read. Let's go ahead and pop over to, where's my spinning wheel? Oh, this is way harder than I thought it would be. Did it spin? Oh, it did. 1. Oh, that's Scythe. So it looks like we will go ahead and start our reread of the Scythe series, which I think is the most beneficial, especially since it'll help us get another book off of our TBR when I can eventually go ahead and get to that short story collection. So there we go. As you can tell, this video is going to take quite a while. Hopefully not as long because the other books I haven't read, so I don't really have anything to say about them. All right, so the next category is going to be nonfiction. So we are going to go through 5 nonfiction books, and then we'll go ahead and see which of them we will definitely be reading. I have definitely been in a nonfiction mood, so I'm sure I will get to some others, but this is a definite read. The first is going to be The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. I have read another book by this author. I believe it was The Splendid and the Vile. Yes, because it was the one about Churchill. So I have read a book by this author before. So this one specifically, he imbues the incredible events surrounding the 1893 Chicago World's Fair with such a drama that readers may find themselves checking the book's categorization to be sure that The Devil in the White City is not, in fact, a highly imaginative novel. Larson tells the story of 2 men, Daniel H. Burnham, the architect responsible for the fair's construction, and H.H. Holmes, a serial killer masquerading as a charming doctor. So that is what's discussed in this book. I did hear that it's more about the fair than the serial killer, and that the serial killer aspect may have been pushed a little bit more by the publisher to make it more interesting to a larger group of people, but we will see if we end up reading it. The next nonfiction on here is one that's probably a little less known, and that is The Woman Warrior by Maxine Hong Kingston. And this book is going to be just a Chinese American woman tells the Chinese myths, family stories, and events of her California childhood that have shaped her identity. So it's more of a memoir. It has a very short synopsis. That was literally all that it said, so it doesn't tell me much, but every once in a while a memoir is a good time, so we will go ahead and see. Choice number 3 is another memoir, and this one is called A Year Without a Name by Cyrus Grace Dunham. And this synopsis says, how do you know if you are transgender? How do you know if what you want and feel is real? How do you know whether to believe yourself? Cyrus Dunham's life always felt like a series of imitations: lovable little girl, daughter, sister, young gay woman. But in a culture of relentless self-branding and in a family subject to the intrusions and objectifications that attend fame, dissociation can come to feel normal. So it seems like we have a trans character, a trans person who was living in a family that had a spotlight on them, so it might have been a little more difficult for them to come out. So that sounds intriguing to me. The next book is called Unwell Women: Misdiagnosis and Myth in the Man-Made World by Eleanor Cleghorn. This says a trailblazing conversation starting history of women's health from the earliest medical ideas about women's illness to hormones and autoimmune diseases, brought together in a fascinating, sweeping narrative. Eleanor Cleghorn became an unwell woman 10 years ago. She was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease after a long period of being told her symptoms were anything from psychosomatic to a possible pregnancy. As Eleanor learned to live with her unpredictable disease, she turned to history for answers and found an enraging legacy of suffering, mystification, and misdiagnosis. An Unwell Woman, Eleanor Cleghorn traces the almost unbelievable history of how medicine has failed women by treating their bodies as alien and other, often to perilous effect. The result is an authoritative and groundbreaking exploration of the relationship between women and medical practice, from the wandering womb of ancient Greece to the rise of witch trials across Europe, and from the dawn of hysteria as a catch-all for difficult to diagnose disorders to the first forays into autoimmunity and the shifting understanding of hormones, menstruation, menopause, conditions like endometriosis. So as a woman, obviously I am interested in that, especially as a chronically ill woman. So that will be an interesting read. And the final nonfiction choice is going to be The Whiteness of Wealth by Dorothy Brown, a groundbreaking expose of racism in the American taxation system from a law professor and expert on tax policy. You're probably like, Natalie, what? I know. I'm hoping that she writes it in a way that my tiny little brain can understand. So Dorothy Brown became a tax lawyer to get away from race. As a young black girl growing up in the South Bronx, she's seen how racism limited the lives of her family and neighbors. Her law school classes offered a refreshing contrast. Tax law was about numbers, and the only color that mattered was green. But when Brown sat down to prepare tax returns for her parents, she found something strange. James and Dodie Brown, a plumber and a nurse, seemed to be paying an unusually high percentage of their income taxes. When Brown became a law professor, she set out to understand why. In The Whiteness of Wealth, Brown draws on decades of cross-disciplinary research to show that tax law isn't as colorblind as she once believed. She takes us into her adopted city of Atlanta, introducing us to families across the economic spectrum whose stories demonstrate how American tax law rewards the preferences and practices of white people while pushing black people further behind. From attending college to getting married to buying a home, black Americans find themselves in a financial disadvantage compared to their white peers. The results are an ever-increasing wealth gap and more black families shut out of American dreams. So I think that sounds very interesting. I would happily read any of these books, but let me go ahead and spin the wheel and maybe not make it as awkward as the first time. Practice makes perfect, right, guys? All right. Yeah. Okay, it's going. It's going. What is that? 1 or is that a 4? That's a 4. All right. Number 4. What was number 4? Unwell Women. So I will be reading Unwell Women, which I think is an excellent thing for me to be reading. So hurrah! All right, guys, on to category number 3. We are moving on to books that have disability representation in them. And the first one is quite a popular one by a popular author that I have been meaning to read for a while, and that is going to be All's Well by Mona Awad. Miranda Fitch's life is a waking nightmare. The accident that ended her burgeoning acting career left her with excruciating chronic back pain, a failed marriage, and a deepening dependence on painkillers. And now she's on the verge of losing her job as a college theater director. Determined to put on Shakespeare's All's Well That Ends Well, the play that promised and cost her everything, she's faced with a mutinous cast hell-bent on staging Macbeth instead. Miranda sees her chance at redemption slip through her fingers. That's when she meets 3 strange benefactors who have an eerie knowledge of Miranda's past and a tantalizing promise for her future, one where the show goes on. Her rebellious students get what's coming to them, and the invisible, doubted pain that's kept her from the spotlight is made known. So I've heard good things about this book and this author, so had to go ahead and put her on the list. The next book is one that has intrigued me for a little while, ever since I heard about it. I believe it is a Of Mice and Men retelling, and that is Hurt You by Mary Myung-ok Lee. Yes, so this is a stunning YA homage to Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. It tells this tragic story of a Korean American teen who fights to protect herself and her neurodivergent older brother from a hostile community. Moving beyond the quasi-fraternal bond that is the unforgettable George and Lenny from Of Mice and Men, Hurt You explores the actual sibling bond of George and Leonardo da Vinci Daewoo Kim, who has an unnamed neurological disability that resembles autism. The themes of race, disability, and class spin themselves out in a suburban high school where the Kim family has moved in order to access better services for Leonardo. Suddenly unmoored from the familiar, including the support of her aunt Clara, Georgia struggles to find her place in an Asian majority school where whiteness still dominates culturally, and she finds herself feeling not Korean enough. Her one pole star is her commitment to her brother, a loyalty that finds itself at odds with her immigrant parents' dreams for her, and an ableist, racist society that may bring violence to Leonardo despite her efforts to keep him safe. So I have a feeling this story is gonna hurt a little bit because I remember Mice and Men made me really sad. Book number 3 is going to be The Silence Between Us by Alison Gervius. So this is about deaf teen Maya. She moves across the country and must attend a hearing school for the first time. As if that wasn't hard enough, she also has to adjust to the hearing culture, which she finds frustrating and also surprising when some classmates, including Bo Watson, take time to learn ASL. As Maya looks past graduation and focuses on her future dreams, nothing, not even an unexpected romance, will derail her pursuits. But when people in her life, deaf and hearing alike, ask her to question parts of her deaf identity, Maya stands proudly, never giving into the idea that her deafness is a disadvantage. So that has some deaf representation in it. Up next, we have a little bit of a historical romance in My Darling Duke by Stacey Reed. Miss Catherine Danvers is a desperate wallflower. Her family is on the brink of financial ruin, and it's up to her to save her mother and sisters from a life of indignities. So she transforms herself into the incomparable Kitty Danvers, the fiance of the enigmatic and reclusive Alexander Masters, Duke of Thornton, once dubbed the mad, bad, and dangerous catch of the season. 10 years ago, society and the women Alexander Masters loved called him a monster after a tragic accident left him scarred and confined to a wheelchair. His heart exists in cold, lonely exile until he learns he has a fiancée, a deceptive, clever, and utterly intriguing woman he's never met. Miss Danvers will now learn the consequences of engaging herself to the beast, where Alexander is determined to make her his. Soon they are involved in a chase, a clash of wills, and though he once vowed to never love again, he burns for the enchanting Miss Danvers, and denying his heart may cost him an exquisite love that happens only once in a lifetime. So that sounds like a fun time. We all love a little historical romance. And the final option for disability rep, we have Blackbird Blue Road by Sophia Pasternak, and I believe this is a young adult, if maybe even a middle grade. Yeah, it does say middle grade here. So it says, in this historical fantasy novel, Ziva will do anything to save her twin brother Pasa from his illness, even facing the angel of death himself. Pasa has lived with leprosy for years, and the twins have spent most of the time working on a cure. Then Pasa has a vision. The angel of death will come for him on Rosh Hashanah. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Just 1 month away. So Ziva takes her brother and runs away to find doctors who can cure him. But when they meet and accidentally free a half-demon boy, he suggests paying his debt by leading them to the fabled city of Lutz, where no one ever dies, the only place Pasa will be safe. They just need to run faster than the angel of death can fly. So that sounds interesting. So let's see which of these books I am going to put in my challenge cup. Click. All right. 2? Is that on 2? Or is that a 5? That's a 5. I can read. All right, so book number 5. So that is the middle grade book that I was just talking about, which was called Blackbird Bluebird Road. So on the bright side, middle grade books are usually pretty quick reads. All right, we are on to the 4th category, and this video is already really long. I told you this was going to be a long video, so I hope you guys are comfy, enjoying your drink, just chilling, maybe adding some books to your TBR here. But the next category is going to be books by Black authors. The first book on this list is a book that is probably one of the oldest books on my TBR, and that is Yesterday is History by Kosoko Jackson. I believe this is his young adult book. I read an adult book by him and didn't love it, and so my interest in this book waned a little bit, but I still want to give it a try, so I'm going to go ahead and add it to this list. So it says, weeks ago, Ander Cobb received a much needed liver transplant. He's ready for his life to finally begin until one night when he passes out and wakes up somewhere totally unexpected in 1969, where he connects with a magnetic boy named Michael. And then, just as suddenly as he arrived, he slips back to present-day Boston, where the family of his donor is waiting to explain that his new liver came with a side effect, the ability to time travel. And they've tasked their youngest son, Blake, with teaching Ander how to use his unexpected new gift. Ander splits his time bouncing between the past and the future, between Michael and Blake. Michael's everything Ander wished he could be, and Blake still reeling from the death of his brother. Ander's donor keeps him at arm's length despite their obvious attraction to each other. Torn between two boys, one in the past and one in the present, Ander has to figure out where he belongs, and more importantly, who he wants to be before the consequences of jumping in time catch up to him and change his future for good. So that sounds interesting, a little bit of time travel romance. The next book on here is How to Love a Jamaican by Alexa Arthurs. Tenderness and cruelty, loyalty and betrayal, ambition and regret. Alexa Arthurs navigates these tensions by extraordinary effect in her debut collection about Jamaican immigrants and their families back home. Sweeping from close-knit island communities to the streets of New York City and Midwestern university towns, these 11 stories form a portrait of a nation, a people, and a way of life. In Light-Skinned Girls and Kelly Rowlands, an NYU student befriends a fellow Jamaican whose privileged West Coast upbringing has blinded her to the hard realities of race. In Mash Up Love, a twin's chance sighting of his estranged brother, the prodigal son of the family, stirs up unresolved feelings of resentment. In Bad Behavior, a couple leave their wild teenage daughter with her grandmother in Jamaica, hoping the old ways will straighten her out. In Mermaid River, a Jamaican teenage boy is reunited with his mother in New York after 8 years apart. In The Ghost of Yayi, a recently murdered student haunts a despairing Jamaican athlete recruited to an Iowa college. And in Shirley from a Small Place, a world-famous pop star retreats to her mother's big new house in Jamaica, which still holds the power to restore something vital. So it sounds like a short story collection. We'll see how that goes. The third book is going to be How Beautiful We Were by Mbolo Mbu. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. This is a book I heard about a while ago and would love to get to. We should have known the end was near. So begins Mbolo's powerful second novel set in the fictional African village of Kosawa. It tells the story of a people living in fear amidst environmental degradation wrought by an American oil company. Pipeline spills have rendered farmlands infertile. Children are dying from drinking toxic water. Promises of cleanup and financial reparations to the villages are made and ignored. The country's government, led by a brazen dictator, exists to serve its own interest. Left with few choices, the people of Kosovo decide to fight back. Their struggles would last for decades and come at a steep price. Told through the perspective of a generation of children and the family of a girl named Thula, who grows up to become a revolutionary. How Beautiful We Were is a masterful exploration of what happens when the reckless drive of profit coupled with the ghost of colonialism comes up against one community's determination to hold on to its ancestral land and a young woman's willingness to sacrifice everything for the sake of her people's freedom. So sounds intense, sounds interesting. Next we have Friday Black, which I believe is a short story collection again, and that's by Nana Kwame Adjei-Burenya. So these stories explore urgent instances of racism and cultural unrest and the ways we fight for humanity in an unforgiving world. In the Finkelstein Five, she reckons with the brutal prejudice of our justice system. In Zimmerland, we see Far Too Easy to Believe imagining of racism as sport. And Friday Black and How to Sell a Jacket as Told by Ice King shows the horrors of consumerism and the toll it takes on all of us. So that is a short story collection revolving around racism. And book number 5 under this category is going to be Under the Udola Trees by Chinolo Okparanta. And this is inspired by Nigerian folk tales and its war. It is a deeply searching, powerful debut about the dangers of living and loving openly. Ijoma comes of age as her nation does. Born before independence, she is 11 when civil war breaks out in the young Republic of Nigeria. Sent away to safety, she meets another displaced child and they, star-crossed, fall in love. They are from different ethnic communities. They are also both girls. When their love is discovered, Ijoma learns that she will have to hide this part of herself, but there is a cost to living inside a lie. Under the Udala Tree uses one woman's lifetime to examine the ways in which Nigerians continue to struggle towards selfhood, even as their nation contends with and recovers from the effects of war and division. Nigerian lives are also wrecked and lost from taboo and prejudice. The story offers a glimmer of hope, a future where a woman might just be able to shape her life around truth and love. So we got ourselves a little sapphic relationship here, but it's obviously a lot more than that as well. So let's go ahead and see which of these 5 I will be putting in my challenge cup. That time it's 2, or is it 5 again? It's 5 again. Okay. Oh, okay. I'm actually kind of excited about that because that is going to be Under the Udula Tree, and I'm really excited about reading that one. All right, so the 5th category is going to be translated books. So this first book is called Vita Nostra, and it is by Marina Dashenko and Sergei Dashenko, and it is translated by Julia Mitov-Hersey. So the synopsis of the story is, while vacationing at the beach with her mother, Sasha meets the mysterious Fret Kozonikov under the most peculiar circumstances. The teenage girl is powerless to refuse when the strange and unusual man with an air of the sinister directs her to perform a task with potentially scandalous consequences. He rewards her effort with a strange golden coin. As the days progress, Sasha carries out other acts for which she receives more coins from him. As summer ends, her domineering mentor directs her to move to a remote village and use her gold to enter the Institute of Special Technologies. Though she does not want to go to this unknown town or school, she also feels it's the only place she should be. Against her mother's wishes, Sasha leaves behind all that is familiar and begins her education. As she quickly discovers, the Institute's special technologies are unlike anything she has ever encountered. The books are impossible to read, the lessons obscure to the point of maddening, and the work refuses memorization. Using terror and coercion to keep the students in line, the school does not punish them for their transgressions and failures. Instead, their families pay a terrible price. Yet, despite her fears, Sasha undergoes changes that defy the dictates of matter and time, experiences which are nothing she has ever dreamed of, and suddenly all she could ever want. So I heard this book is kind of like complex and a little hard to understand. We'll give it a try. The next book on this list is actually a book that I think in 2023 was on my 12 books recommended by 12 friends that I did not get to. and that is Human Acts by Hong Kong, and Deborah Smith is the translator. This is a historical fiction. Amid a violent student uprising in South Korea, a young boy named Dong-ho is shockingly killed. The story of this tragic episode unfolds in a sequence of interconnected chapters as the victims and the bereaved encounter suppression, denial, and the echoing agony of the massacre. From Dong-ho's best friend who meets his own fateful end, to an editor struggling against censorship, to a prisoner and a factory worker, each suffering from traumatic memories, and to Dong-ho's own grief-stricken mother, and through their collective heartbreak and acts of hope, is the tale of a brutalized people in search of a voice. A book that is pretty highly regarded, so hopefully I get the chance to maybe get to it this year. The next book on this list is going to be The Feast of the Goat by Mario Vargas Llosa. Edith Grossman is the translator. This is another historical fiction. Haunted all her life by feelings of terror and emptiness, 49-year-old Lorena Cabral returns to her native Dominican Republic and finds herself reliving the events of 1961 when the capital was still called Trujillo City and one old man terrorized a nation of 3 million people. Rafael Trujillo, the depraved, ailing dictator whom Dominicans call the Goat, controls his inner circle with a combination of violence and blackmail. Trujillo's gaudy palace, treachery, and cowardice have become the way of life, but Trujillo's grasp is slipping away. There is a conspiracy against him and a Machiavellian revolution already underway that will have bloody consequences of its own. In this masterpiece of Latin American and world literature, and one of the finest political novels ever written, Mario Vargas Llosa recounts the end of a regime and the birth of a terrible democracy, giving voice to the historical Trujillo and the victims, both innocent and complicit, drawn into his deadly orbit. I have to admit, like, just the title and the cover is very enticing, so would not mind giving that a go. Up next, we have The Anomaly by Hervé Letellier, and Adriana Hunter is the translator. So this is French, I believe. A virtuoso novel where logic confronts magic and that explores the part of ourselves that elude us. In June 2021, a senseless event upends the lives of hundreds of men and women, all passengers on a flight from Paris to New York. Among them, Blake, a respectable family man, though he works as a contract killer. Slim Boy, a Nigerian pop star tired of living a lie. Joanna, a formidable lawyer whose flaws have caught up with her, and Victor Mazel, a critically acclaimed yet commercially unsuccessful writer who suddenly becomes a cult hit. All of them believe they had double lives. None imagined just how true that was. This witty variation on the doppelganger theme, which takes us on a journey from Lagos and Mumbai to the White House, is Hervé Letellier's most ambitious work yet. So I don't know, for me it's almost giving like a little bit of Blake Crouch with a doppelganger kind of situation, where I kind of feel like they have two different lives, but like maybe, I don't know, it's giving a little bit of like recursion vibes, so I'm interested in that. And the final translated work is going to be Jawbone. This is by Monica Ojeda, and Sarah Booker is the translator. So this says, Fernanda and Annalise are so close they are practically sisters, a double image, inseparable. So how does Fernanda end up bound on the floor of a deserted cabin, held hostage by one of her teachers and estranged from Annalise? When Fernanda, Annalise, and their friends from the Delta Bilingual Academy convene after school, Annalise leads them in thrilling but increasingly dangerous rituals to a rhinestoned, Dior-scented drag queen god of her own invention. Even more perilous is the secret Annalise and Fernanda share, rooted in a dare in which violence meets love. Meanwhile, their literature teacher, Miss Clara, who is obsessed with imitating her dead mother, struggles to preserve her deteriorating sanity. Each day she edges nearer to a total break with reality, interweaving pop culture references and horror concepts drawn from the Herman Melville H.P. Lovecraft and anonymous creepypasta. Jawbone is an ominous multivocal novel that explores the terror inherent in the pure potential of adolescence and the fine line between desire and fear. Sounds a little kooky, but you know, it's always nice to try things outside of our comfort zone. So let's go ahead and take a look at the wheel. I did shuffle it a little bit, so I think I might do that in between each spin, where I just kind of shuffle the numbers around a little. So let's go ahead and see what we get. This video is a little bit messy, but I'm having a good time, so I hope you're kind of having a good time. What is that? Is that 5 again? 2. From this direction, 2 and 5 look like the same. I don't know why. All right, number 2. That was going to be Human Acts. Look at that. I was meant to read it 2 years ago, and now it is finally going to happen. All right, we are approaching the halfway point here, and we are going on to category number 6, which is going to be books by Hispanic or Latinx authors. The first book is going to be The Mirror Season by Anna Marie McLemore, and I believe this is a young adult story. It says, when two teens discover that they were both sexually assaulted at the same party, they develop a cautious friendship through her family's possible magic pasteleria, her secret forest of otherworldly trees, and the swallows returning to their hometown. Graciela Cristales' whole world changes after she and a boy she barely knows are assaulted at the same party. She loses her gift for making enchanted pan dulce. Neighborhood trees vanish overnight while mirrored glass appears, bringing reckless magic with it, and Celia is haunted by what happened to her and what happened to the boy whose name she never learned. But when the boy Locke shows up at Celia's school, he has no memory of that night and no clue that a single piece of mirror glass is taking his life apart. Celia decides to help him, which means hiding the truth about that night, because Celia knows who assaulted her and him, and she knows that her survival and his depend on no one finding out what really happened. So pretty intense story, but hopefully well done. Up next is a pretty well-known story that's been making the round. I believe, no, this one isn't a short story collection, is it? No, I don't think so. And that is Our Shared Night by Mariana Enriquez, and Megan McDowell is the translator. So this is a woman's mysterious death puts her husband and son on a collision course with her demonic family. Yikes! A young father and son set out on a road trip, devastated by the death of the wife and mother they both loved. United in grief, the pair travel to her ancestral home, where they must confront the terrifying legacy she has bequeathed. A family called the Order that commits unspeakable acts in search of immortality. For Gaspar, the son, this maniacal cult is his destiny. As the Order tries to pull him into their evil, he and his father take flight, attempting to outrun a powerful clan that will do anything to ensure its own survival. But how far will Gaspar's father go to protect his child, and can anyone escape their fate? Moving back and forth in time from London in the swinging 1960s to the brutal years of Argentina's military dictatorship and its turbulent aftermath, Our Share Night is a novel like no other. A family story, a ghost story, a story of the occult and the supernatural, a book about the complexities of love and longing with queer subplots and themes. This is the masterpiece of one of Latin America's most original novelists, a memorizing writer. who demands to be read. So, sounds interesting. I've heard good and bad things about this book, so we will see what I think. The next book, the third on this, is going to be Goddess of Filth by V. Castro. So this synopsis says, one hot summer night, best friends Lourdes, Fernanda, Anna, Perla, and Paulina hold a seance. It's all fun and games at first, but their tipsy laughter turns to terror when the flames burn straight through their prayer candles and Fernanda starts crawling towards her friends and chanting in Nahuatl, the language of their Aztec ancestors. Over the next few weeks, shy, modest Fernanda starts acting strangely, smearing herself in black makeup, shredding her hands on rose thorns, suckling sin out of the mouths of the guilty. The local priest is convinced it's a demon, but Lourdes begins to suspect it's something else, something far more ancient and powerful. As Father Moreno's obsession with Fernanda grows, Lourdes enlists the help of her Bruja craft crew and a professor, Dr. Camacho, to understand what is happening to her friend in this unholy tale of possession gone right. A possession gone right. Okay, we'll see what that means. Up next, we have Into the Light, which is by Mark Oshiro. This is a young adult story. When you're like me, you have to lie. It's been 1 year since Manny was cast out of his family and driven into the wilderness of the American Southwest. Since then, Manny lives by self-taught rules that keep him moving and keep him alive. Now he's taking a chance on a traveling situation with the Barala family, whose attractive but surly son, Carlos, seems to promise a new future. I can't let anyone down. Eli abides by the rules of his family, living in a secluded community that raised him to believe his obedience will be rewarded. But an unsettling question slowly eats away at Eli's once unwavering faith in reconciliation. Why can't he remember his past? What am I supposed to do? But the reported discovery of an unidentified body found in the hills of Idlewild, California, will draw both of these young men into facing their biggest fears and confronting their own identity and who they are allowed to be. Find the truth. For fans of Courtney Summers and Tiffany D. Jackson, Into the Light is a ripped from the headline story with Oshiro's signature mix of raw emotions and visceral prose, but with a startling twist you have to read to believe. So we will see. And the final book on this list is going to be Spellbound by Ali Theron. And this is set in New York, 1925. Arthur Kenzie's life work is protecting the world from the supernatural relics that could destroy it. When an amulet with the power to control the tides is shipped to New York, he must intercept it before it can be used to devastating effects. This time, in order to succeed, he needs a powerful psychometric, and the only one available has sworn off his abilities altogether. Rory Brodgan's gift comes with great risk. To protect himself, he becomes a recluse, redirecting his magic to find counterfeit antiques. But with the city's fate hanging in the balance, he can't force himself to say no. Being with Arthur is dangerous, but Rory's ever-growing attraction to him begins to make him brave. And as Arthur coaxes him out of his seclusion, a magical and emotional bond begins to form, one that proves impossible to break, even when Arthur sacrifices him to keep Rory safe, and Rory must risk everything to save him. So we got ourselves a little historical male romance. You know, I like to see it. So let's go ahead and make this shuffle, and then we will spin and see what we get. Peekaboo. All right, we got 5 again. So that is going to be Spellbound. blah blah. All right, on to number 6. These books are all written by Indigenous authors. The first is by an author that seems to be quite popular. I don't think I've ever read any of his books, and that is Johnny Appleseed by Joshua Whitehead. I believe that he is quite known for writing queer Indigenous stories. So this book says, "You're gonna need a rock and a whole lot of medicine" is a mantra that Johnny Appleseed, a young two-spirited indigiqueer, repeats to himself in this vivid and utterly compelling novel. Off the reservation and trying to find ways to live and love in the big city, Johnny becomes a cyber sex worker who fetishizes himself in order to make a living. Self-ordained in an NDN glitter princess, Johnny has 1 week before he must return to the res in his former life to attend the funeral of his stepfather. The next 7 days are like a fevered dream. Stories of love, trauma, sex, kinship, ambition, and the heartbreaking recollection of his beloved Kokum grandmother. Johnny's world is a series of breakages, appendages, and linkages. And he goes through the motions of preparing to return home. He learns how to put together the pieces of his life. Wow, that synopsis was a bit of a roller coaster. Not 100% sure what I just read, but sounds fun. Up next we have Two Princes, and this is by Maggie Blackbird. Billy Red Sky, a rebellious punk who loves art and nature, is saddled with a welfare-leeching alcoholic mother and a criminal older brother who are the joke of their Ojibwe community. Sick and tired of being perceived as a loser, Billy deals drugs for his older brother to earn quick money. Becoming a drug dealer is not going to help you not be a loser, just FYI. He hopes if he buys a dirt bike, he'll finally impress the chief's popular and aloof son, Rennie might be his name, Oshawi. When the two are forced to serve detention together, a friendship begins to bloom, but much to Billy's frustration, Rennie keeps putting him on ice. To make his biggest dream come true, if he finally wants to call Rennie his own, Billy must make a huge decision that could cost him anything. Everything, not anything. Everything. So there we go. We just got some gay drama. Up next, third book is going to be It Was Never Going to Be Okay by J. Simpson. This one I believe is actually poetry, which I don't read a lot, but you know, we'll give it a try. Sovereignty, vulnerability, honesty. Miss Magazine, It Was Never Going to Be Okay is a collection of poetry and prose exploring the intimacies of understanding intergenerational trauma, indigeneity, I always feel like I can't say that word, and queerness, while addressing urban indigenous diaspora and breaking down the limitations of sexual understanding as a trans woman. As a way to move through the linear timeline of healing and coming to terms with how trauma does not exist in subsequent happenings, It Was Never Going to Be Okay tries to break down years of silence in Simpson's debut collection of I Am 5. My sisters are saying, boy, I do not know what the words mean. I don't know what they mean either. I just feel like I'm reading a bunch of words. They mean something. So there we go. That's why I don't read poetry a lot, because I'm like, what is being said? But you know what? It's okay to go out of our comfort zone. This is a challenge cup. All right, fourth book on here is A Minor Chorus, which is by Billy Ray Belcourt. And this is a book set in North Alberta. A queer Indigenous doctoral student steps away from his dissertation to write a novel. He is adrift, caught between his childhood on the reservation and this new life of the urban intelligentsia intelligentsia, maybe is the word. Billy Ray Belcourt's unnamed narrator chronicles a series of encounters, a heart-to-heart with a fellow doctoral student, River, who over the mounting pressure placed on marginalized scholars, a meeting with Michael, a closeted adult from his hometown whose vulnerability and loneliness punctuates the realities of queer life on the fringe. Amid these conversations, the narrator is haunted by memories of Jack, a cousin caught in the cycle of police violence, drugs, and survival. Jack's life parallels the narrator's own. The possibilities of escape and imprisonment are left to chance, with colonialism stacking the odds. A minor chorus introduces the dazzling literary voice of the Lamba Literary Award winner and Canadian #1 national best-selling poet. So this guy was also a poet, but I think this is a novel, so it's not a poetry collection, but it will probably be written poetically. And the final book on this list is going to be called Catching Teller Crow. And this is by Ambeline Quaimulian and Ezekiel Quaimulian. So a married couple or siblings, I'm not really sure. But either way, nothing's been the same for Beth Teller since she died. Her dad, a detective, is the only one who can see her and hear her, and he's drowning in grief. But now they have a mystery to solve together. Who is Isabel Catching, and what is her connection to the fire that killed a man? What happened to the people who haven't been seen since the fire? As Beth unravels the mystery, she finds a shocking story lurking beneath the surface of a small town, and a friendship that lasts beyond one life and into the next. So it sounds like we're going to be following a ghost solving a mystery. So let's go ahead and shuffle up these numbers and see what we get. Oh my god, where's my tapete? There it is. Sorry guys, this is messy. I think that's the number 1. So that should be Johnny Appleseed. Yep. We'll be reading that book that had a wacky synopsis. All right, we are on to category 8, guys. We are chugging along. How are you doing? My voice is like, why are we saying so many words out loud right now? So the next category is going to be queer books. So, you know me, I love me a queer book. So with this one, I really went to like the bottom of my TBR pile and pulled some of the oldest queer books that have just been sitting there for years that I haven't gotten to. And the first is going to be Ziggy Stardust and Me. This is by James Brandon, and this I believe is a young adult story. It is set in the year 1973. The Watergate hearings are in full swing. The Vietnam War is still raging, and homosexuality is still officially considered a mental illness. In the midst of these trying times is 16-year-old Jonathan Collins, a bullied, anxious, asthmatic kid who, aside from an alcoholic father and his sympathetic neighbor and friend Starla, is completely alone. To cope, Jonathan escapes to the safe haven of his imagination, where his hero David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust and dead relatives, including his mother, guide him through the rough terrain of his life. In his alternate reality, Jonathan can be anything: a superhero, an astronaut, Ziggy Stardust himself, or completely normal and not a boy who likes other boys. When he completes his treatments, he will be normal, at least he hopes. Before that can happen, Webb stumbles into his life. Webb is everything Jonathan wishes he could be: fearless, fearsome, and most importantly, not ashamed of being gay. Jonathan doesn't want to be like brooding Webb, who has secrets all his own. Jonathan wants nothing more than to be fixed once and for all, but he's drawn to Webb anyway. Webb is the first person in the real world to see Jonathan completely and think he's perfect. Webb is the kind of escape Jonathan has never known. For the first time in his life, he may finally feel free enough to love and accept himself as he is. So that sounds like we may have a character who's considering conversion therapy. Hopefully he does not go through with it. The next book we have is called Lie With Me. This is by Felipe Besson. This is actually translated, and Molly Ringwald is the translator. Just outside a hotel of Bordeaux, Felipe chances upon a young man who bears a striking resemblance to his first love. What follows is a look back at the relationship he's never forgotten, a hidden affair with a gorgeous boy named Thomas during their last year of high school. Without ever acknowledging they know each other in the halls, they steal time to meet in secret, carrying on a passionate, world-altering affair. So I find it kind of interesting that one of the characters has the author's name. So either way, I have a feeling that this won't be like a super happy story because he's like looking back on a romance that has clearly ended, but still, it sounds interesting and I would like to check it out. Up next, we have a young adult sci-fi story, and that is called Bonds of Brass by Emily Skrutsky. I hope I say her name right. It says a young pilot risks everything to save his best friend, the man he trusts most and might even love, only to learn that he's secretly the heir to a brutal galactic empire. I hate when that happens. So Etienne Nuzan's life was shattered when the merciless Umber Empire invaded. He's spent 7 years putting himself back together under its rule, joining an Umber military academy and becoming the best pilot in his class. Even better, he's met Gale Verse, his exasperating and infuriatingly enticing roommate who's made the academy feel like a new home. But when dozens of classmates spring an assassination plot on Gale, a devastating secret comes to light. Gale is the heir to the Umber Empire. Etan barely manages to save his best friend and flee the compromised academy unscathed, rattled both that Gale stands to inherit the empire that broke him and that there are still people willing to fight back against the Umber rule. As they piece together a way to deliver Gale safely to his throne, Etan finds himself torn in half by an impossible choice. Does he save the man who's won his heart and trust that Gale's goodness could transform the empire, or does he throw his lot in with the brewing rebellion and fight to take back what's rightfully theirs? So what's he gonna do? The next book is a book where I'm like, why have I not read this? Like literally why have I not read it? I feel like everyone who reads it loves it, and I just keep not reading it. And that is The Wolf at the Door by Charlie Adhara. This is queer paranormal, I believe. An ex-FBI agent is partnered with the enemy in the suspenseful first installment of Charlie Adhar's Big Bad Wolf series. Hunting for big bad wolves was never part of Agent Cooper Dayton's plan, but a werewolf attack lands him in the carefully guarded Bureau of Special Investigations. A new case comes with a new partner, ruggedly sexy werewolf Oliver Park. Park is an agent of the Trust, a werewolf oversight organization working to ease escalating tensions with the BSI, but as far as Cooper's concerned, it's failing. As they investigate a series of mysterious deaths, unlike anything they've seen, every bone in Cooper's body is suspicious of his new partner, even when Park proves himself as competent as he is utterly captivating. When more people vanish, pressure to solve the case skyrockets, and though he's resolved to keep things professional, Cooper's friction with Parker soon erupts into a physical need that cannot be contained or controlled. But with a body count that's rising by the day, werewolves and humans are in equal danger. If Cooper and Park don't catch the killer soon, one or both of them could be the next to go. So even if I don't select this, I really should try to get to it this year, like honestly. And the last book in this category is called Something Human by A.G. Demas. They met on a battlefield and saved each other's lives. It's not the way enemies to lovers usually works. Adaris comes from a civilization of democracy and indoor plumbing. Russ belongs to a tribe of tattooed semi-nomadic horse breeders. They meet in the aftermath of a battle when Russ saves Ardaris' life and Ardaris returns the favor. As they shelter in an abandoned temple, a friendship neither of them could have imagined grows into a mutual attraction. But Russ, whose people abhor love between men, is bound by an oath of celibacy, and Ardaris has a secret of his own that he cannot share. With their people poised for a long and bitter conflict, it seems too much to hope that these two men could turn their fleeting happiness into something lasting, unless of course the relationship between them changes the course of their people's history altogether. Something Human is a standalone male-male romance set in an imaginary ancient world about two people bridging a cultural divide with the help of great sex, pedantic discussions about the gods, and bad jokes about standing stones. Saving the world through gay sex. We all knew this was the solution, right? All along. All right, so let's see which book we will be putting in our challenge cup. We're gonna shuffle and we're going to see if we can center this at least somewhat. We're doing our best, guys. Is that it? Me and my twos. I think it's a 5. It's a 5. All right. Looks like we are watching a couple of warriors save the world through gay sex. Let's go. All right, so category number 9 is going to be that these books are by either non-binary or trans authors. So the first book on this list is going to be Coffee Boy by Austen Chant. I have read this author before. They wrote a book called Peter Darling, which was like a Peter Pan retelling, which I quite enjoy despite the fact that I don't like Peter Pan. So I have faith in this author. It says, after graduation, Kieran expects to go straight into a career of flipping burgers, only to be offered the internship of his dreams at a political campaign. But the pressure of being an out trans man in the workplace quickly sucks the joy out of things, as does Seth, the humorless campaign strategist who watches his every move. Soon the only upside to the job is that Seth has a painful crush on their painfully straight boss, and Kieran has a front row seat to the drama. But when Seth proves to be as respectful and supportive as he is a prick, Kieran develops an awkward crush of his own, one which Seth is far too prim and proper to ever reciprocate. So there we have it. Just a little bit of work crush drama. Up next, we have a pretty popular book that I have not read yet because I'm slightly intimidated by it, and that is She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. So this is a Mulan retelling from what I remember. It says, in a famine-stricken village on a dusty yellow plain, 2 children are given 2 fates: a boy, greatness; a girl, nothingness. Classic. In 1345, China lies under the harsh Mongol rule. For the starving peasants of the Central Plains, greatness is something found only in stories. When the Zhou family's 8th-born son, Zhou Chongba, is given a fate of greatness, everyone is mystified as to how it will come to pass. The fate of nothingness received by the family's clever and capable second daughter, on the other hand, is only as expected. When a bandit attack orphans the 2 children, though, it is Zhou Chongba who succumbs to despair and dies. Desperate to escape her own fated death, the girl uses her brother's identity to enter a monastery as a young male novice. Though propelled by her burning desire to survive, Zhou learns she is capable of doing whatever it takes, no matter how callous, to stay hidden from her fate. After her sanctuary is destroyed for supporting the rebellion against Mongol rule, Zhou takes the chance to claim another future her brother abandoned: greatness. So, let's see. It is a story that I feel like is kind of controversial. Some people really like it, some people not so much. So we will see if I read it this year. Up next, book number 3 is going to be Tripping Arcadia by Pitt Mayquist. And this is going to be kind of a gothic horror story. It says med school dropout Lena is desperate for a job, any job, to help her parents who are approaching bankruptcy after her father was injured and laid off nearly simultaneously. So when she's offered a position against all odds working for one of Boston's most elite families, the illustrious and secretive Verdus, she knows she must accept it, no matter how bizarre the interview or how vague the job description. By day, she is assistant to the family doctor and his charge, Jonathan, the sickly, poetic, drunken heir to the family empire, who is as difficult as his illness is mysterious. By night, Lena discovers the more sinister side to the family as she works overtime at their lavish parties, helping to hide their self-destructive tendencies and trying not to fall for Jonathan's alluring sister, Audrey. But when she stumbles upon the knowledge that the Verdu patriarch is the one responsible for the ruin of her own family, Lena vows to get revenge, a poison-filled quest that leads her further into the hedonistic world than she ever bargained for, forcing her to decide how much and who she was willing to sacrifice for payback. So sounds like a good time. Up next is a shorty, and that is the Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. This is graphic novels about tea dragons. It says, after discovering a lost tea dragon in the marketplace, Greta learns about the dying art of tea dragon caretaking from a kind tea shop owner. Or 2 tea shop owners. We have Haskell and Eric. As she befriends them and their shy ward, Minette, Greta sees how the craft enriches their lives and eventually her own. This is like a graphic novel collection that I have literally not heard a bad thing about. I mean, how could you not like little tiny dragons that grow tea leaves on their little horns? That would be a crime against humanity to not like that. All right, so the final book on here is Black Iris, and this book is by Elliot Wake. Now, the image that you're probably seeing shows their dead name, because that is the only image that I can see now, but I read in their little biography that their name is Elliot Wake now. So that is the name that I'm going to be using, even though the book shows their old name. So I just wanted to go ahead and point that out. It says, it only took one moment of weakness for Lainey Keaton's world to fall apart. One stupid gesture for a hopeless crush. Then the rumors began. Slut. They called her queer, psycho, mentally ill, messed up, so messed up even her own mother decided she wasn't worth sticking around for. If Lainey could erase the whole year, she would. College is her chance to start with a clean slate. She's not looking for new friends, but they find her. Charming, handsome Armin, and the only guy patient enough to work through her thorny defenses, and fiery, filterless Blythe, the bad girl and partner in crime who has thorns of her own. But Lainey knows nothing good ever lasts. When the ghost from her past resurfaces, the bully who broke her down completely, she decides it's time to live up to her own legend, and Armin and Blythe are going to help, which was the plan all along, because the rumors are true, every single one, and Lainey is going to show them just how true. I'm actually not really sure what this book is about, but you know what? We're gonna give it a try. I believe this was an author that I read in a short story collection, and I like their writing, so that is what that is gonna be. So let's go ahead and go to the spinning wheel. I feel like my nose is getting a little stuffy. I really hope you guys can't hear it, but I just feel like I'm snuffling, getting a little clogged up here, guys. So, oops, sorry, I already hit spin, but there we go. What does that say? 4. Okay, what was number 4? I already forgot. Oh my god, the Tea Dragon Society. Oh my gosh, the short one. Cool beans. Yes, I am not upset about that at all. All right, we only got 2 more categories, guys. I'm looking at my timer. It is currently at almost an hour and 40 minutes, and there's not much I can cut away here. I mean, other than me like actually looking up the books. So sorry. The second to last category is going to be books that are over 500 pages long because I don't like reading long books. Sorry. So the first book on here is called The Throne of the Five Winds, and this is by S.C. Emmett. It says 2 queens, 2 concubines, 6 princes, innumerable hidden agendas. Yala, lady in waiting to the princess of a vanquished kingdom, must navigate their captor's treacherous imperial court. The emperor's palace, full of ambitious royals, sly gossip, and unforeseen perils, is perhaps the most dangerous place in Zoan. A hostage for her conquered people's good behavior, the Lady Kamar Yala has only her wits and her hidden maiden's blade to protect herself, and her childhood friend, Princess Mahara, sacrifice in marriage for the enemy to secure a tenuous peace. But the emperor is aging, and the Kir princess and her lady-in-waiting soon find themselves pawns in the 6 princes' deadly schemes for the throne, and a single spark could ignite fresh rebellion in Kir. And then the emperor falls ill, and a far bloodier game begins. So this sounds like it's going to have some badass women in it, and we'd love to see it. This next book is one I'm honestly surprised I haven't read, but it's probably because of the length, and that is A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland. This is a male fantasy. I believe it's pretty high on the politics. It says, Kadu, the shy prince of Erusht, finds himself at odds with one of the most powerful ambassadors at court, the body father of the queen's new child, in an altercation which results in his humiliation. To prove his loyalty to the queen, his sister Kadu takes responsibility for the investigation of a break-in at one of their guilds. With the help of his newly appointed bodyguard, the coldly handsome Evmir, who seems to tolerate him at best, in a rush where princes can touch, taste precious metals with their fingers, and myth runs side by side with history, counterfeiting as hearsay, and the conspiracy they discover could cripple the kingdom's financial standing and bring about its ruin. So we got a little bit of romance, and we got some mystery, we got some politics, everything we need. All right, up next we have The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki. This is an author I've heard relatively good things by, but I haven't really read any of their stuff. I also want to apologize in advance. I feel like my nose is getting like stuffier and stuffier by the minute, and I think it's because I have my window open and there must be something like not good for my nose there, for my allergies. So apologies if I sound a little nasally. So after the tragic death of his beloved musician father, 14-year-old Benny O begins to hear voices. The voices belong to the things in his house: a sneaker, a broken Christmas ornament, a piece of wilted lettuce. Although Benny doesn't understand what these things are saying, he can sense their emotional tone. Some are pleasant, a gentle hum or coo, but others are snide, angry, and full of pain. When his mother Annabelle develops a hoarding problem, the voices grow more clamorous. At first, Benny tries to ignore them, but soon the voices follow him outside the house, onto the street, and at school, driving him at last to seek refuge in the silence of a large public library where objects are well behaved and know to speak in whispers. There, Benny discovers a strange new world where things happen. He falls in love with a mesmerizing street artist with a smug pet ferret who uses the library as her performance space. He meets a homeless philosopher poet who encourages him to ask important questions and find his own voice among the many. And he meets his very own book, a talking thing who narrates Benny's life and teaches him to listen to the things that truly matter. So this sounds kind of magical realism, which isn't usually my thing, but it sounds intriguing, so we'll see. I'll give it a try. Up next, we have a book by Stephen King, and that is Pet Sematary. I've never really read Stephen King. I kind of started to read Sleeping Beauties, which I believe he wrote with his son, but I DNF'd it. So this would kind of be a second chance author, but I feel like this is one of his more popular books, and so I wanted to go ahead and give it a try. It says, when the Creeds move into a beautiful old house in rural Maine, it all seems too good to be true. Physician father, beautiful wife, charming little daughter, adorable infant son, and a now idyllic home. As a family, they've got it all, right down to the friendly cat. It says right down to the friendly car, but I'm assuming it's supposed to say cat. But the nearby woods hide a blood-chilling truth more terrifying than death itself, and hideously more powerful. The Creeds are going to learn that sometimes dead is better. So, I kind of know the story of Pet Sematary, but I've never watched the movie or anything, so we'll see if I enjoy it. And the final book on this list of books over 500 pages is going to be Ashes of the Sun by Django Wexler. And this is an adult fantasy story. Long ago, a magical war destroyed an empire, and a new one was built on its ashes. But still, the old grudges simmer, and two siblings will fight on opposite sides to save their world. And the start of Django Wexler's new epic fantasy trilogy. Gyra hasn't seen his beloved sister since their parents sold her to the mysterious Twilight Order. Now, 12 years later after her disappearance, Gyra's sole focus is vengeance, and he's willing to risk anything and anyone to claim enough power to destroy the Order. Chasing rumors of a fabled city protecting a powerful artifact, Gyra comes face to face with his lost sister, but she isn't who she once was. Trained to be a warrior, Maya wields magic for the Twilight Order's cause. Standing on opposite sides of a looming civil war, the two siblings will learn that not even the ties of blood will keep them from splitting the world in two. Intense! Alright, let's see which of these chunks I will be reading, and hit spin and turn you around. Turn around. Number 1. All right. I, of course, don't remember what that was because my memory is terrible. The Throne of the Five Winds. I feel like I put that on a list of like 20 books I want to read in a certain year at some point and didn't get to it, so not too upset about that. And we are on to the final one. Oh my gosh. I knew this video would take a long time, but dang. So the final category is going to be classics. So the first one is going to be Double Indemnity by James M. Cain. I hope I'm saying that correct. It's kind of a funky word. It says, Walter Huff was an insurance salesman with an unfailing instinct for clients who might be in trouble, and his instinct led him to Phyllis Nerdlinger. Phyllis wanted to buy an accident policy on her husband. Then she wanted her husband to have an accident. Walter wanted Phyllis. To get her, he would arrange the perfect murder and betray everything he had ever lived for. So, pretty simple concept. Sounds kind of like one of those books that inspired like a lot of other stories down the line, so figured I would give it a try. The next book is called The Master and Margarita. This is by Mikhail Bulgakov. And Diana Lewis Bergen is the translator, and so is Catherine Turnan O'Connor. All right, guys, so we may have shifted. I mean, then again, I'm just a little bubble in the corner, but my phone, not surprisingly, ran out of storage because of this very long video. So I just had to delete a few things, but let's see what this book is about. It says, this novel's vision of Soviet life in 1930s is so ferociously accurate that it could not be published during the author's lifetime and appeared only in a censored edition in the 1960s. Its truths are so enduring that its language has become part of common Russian speech. One hot spring, the devil arrives in Moscow, accompanied by a retinue that includes a beautiful naked witch, an immense talking black cat with a fondness for chess and vodka. The visitors quickly wreak havoc in a city that refuses to believe in either God or Satan, but they also bring peace to two unhappy Muscovites. One is the master, a writer pilloried for daring to write a novel about Christ and Pontius Pilate. The other is Margarita, who loves the master so deeply that she's willing literally to go to hell for him. What ensues is a novel of exhausting energy, humor, and philosophical depth, a work whose nuances emerged for the first time in Diana Bergen's and Catherine Torrin O'Connor's splendid English version. Will most of this book probably go over my head? Yes. The way Russia is like not at the top of my interest lists, but I have to admit the fact there's a giant cat may have drawn me to the story. Up next, a very popular one by a very popular author, and that is going to be Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I have never read a Jane Austen book. I'm not overly interested in her stuff. I've watched a couple of movies. I think I watched Emma, and then I watched Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, but I've never seen like the original Pride and Prejudice or like any of the versions. I know there's like a few of them. But that being said, we have the romantic clash between Elizabeth Bennet and her proud beau, Mr. Darcy. It is a splendid performance of civilized sparring, and Jane Austen's radiant wit sparkles as her characters dance a delicate quadrille of flirtation and intrigue, making this book the most superb comedy of manners of Regency England. Fun. Can you tell I'm just like love classics? And book number 4, we have Maurice by E.M. Foster, which I believe is another book that couldn't be published until like after the author passed. Maurice is heartbroken over unrequited love, which opens his heart and mind to his own sexual identity. In order to be true to himself, he goes against the grain of society's often unspoken rules of class, wealth, and politics. Foster understood that his homage to same-sex love, if published when he completed it in 1914, would probably end his career. Thus, Maurice languished in a drawer for 57 years, the author requesting it be published only after his death. So yes, this was not published until the author passed away due to it being supportive of the queer community during a time when that was just not okay. So would love to read that. And then the final book, we have Childhood's End, and this is by Arthur C. Clarke. Honestly, I put this on my TBR because we have a gallery that sells like jewelry and art that's called Childhood's End Gallery, and when I was looking it up once, I realized it was a book, and I was like, I feel like I should check that out. So the overlords appeared suddenly over every city, intellectually, technologically, and militarily superior to humankind. Benevolent, they made few demands: unify Earth, eliminate poverty, and end war. With little rebellion, humankind agreed, and a golden age began. But at what cost? With the advent of peace, man ceases to strive for creative greatness, and a malaise settles over the human race. To those who resist, it became evident that the overlords have an agenda of their own. As civilization approaches the crossroads, will the overlords spell the end of humankind or the beginning? So, sounds interesting to me. So let's go ahead and see which of these classics I will be reading. I have a suspicion that if they don't end up in my challenge cup, I'm reading them this year because I don't read a lot of classics. So let's turn her around. What is that? Number 2. What was number 2? Oh my god, was that the Russian one? Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's definitely going to be the most challenging out of all of them because what the hell? All right, guys. So these are all of the books. I should have them all kind of laid out for you here so you can see which ones are going to be in my challenge cup. I will of course be putting them on little scraps of paper, and then we will start pulling them for my January TBR. I'm definitely scared by some of these. I'm more excited for some than others, but I do think that this was an interesting way to do this challenge, to pick the books for this cup. Does it lead to a very long video? Yes, but I really did enjoy the fact that it allowed me to kind of go through my TBR a little bit more and kind of like pick out some books that I have been neglecting. So with that being said, I'm gonna end this video because it's already super duper long. I would love to know if you guys have read any of the books that ended up getting selected and what you thought of them. I would also love to know if in this giant list of books you came across any books that you decided to add to your TBR as well. And as always guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.